She took pleasure in playing with men, caring little that she was a noble lady from a powerful family. With just a few words, she could turn a man into a pawn. She could move however she pleased, until her lover abandoned her without mercy, all because he wanted to marry Cecile, an innocent girl raised in a convent. Hatred gnawed at her like flames. Since he wanted to marry an angel, she would turn that angel into a fallen woman. From the age of 11, Cecile had been sent by her mother to live in a convent. Raised under the guidance of the nuns, she was almost completely cut off from the glittering, pleasure-soaked world outside. Now she had reached the age for marriage. Madame Volanges arranged a match for her daughter with a man of equal social standing, to make sure Cecile could enter marriage with both innocent purity and knowledge of upper-class manners and social tactics. Madame Volanges entrusted her to her cousin, the Marquise de Merteuil. She hoped Merteuil would become her daughter's guide into society. Merteuil had been widowed for years, yet she remained stunningly beautiful and brilliantly intelligent. After years moving through this world of status and desire, she handled human affairs and the games between men and women with effortless skill. When Cecile first arrived in Paris, she seemed reserved and shy at every turn. Even when greeting noblemen, she had to quietly ask Merteuil for guidance. Merteuil was deeply curious about Cecile's future husband. Madame Volanges finally relented and introduced the mysterious fiancé to Merteuil. The moment they met, Merteuil's heart jolted, but her face gave nothing away, still carrying that elegant and composed smile. It turned out that the Monsieur Jurcourt Cecile was going to marry was Merteuil's secret lover of many years, and the troublesome Mistress Jurcourt had mentioned was, naturally, Merteuil herself. On the surface, Merteuil pretended she and Jurcourt were complete strangers, but inside, anger had already burned straight through her. She secretly swore that since Jurcourt loved Cecile's innocence and purity, she would destroy that purity with her own hands. She wanted Jurcourt to discover on his wedding night that his bride was no longer untouched. She wanted him to become the laughingstock of all Paris, just to satisfy the hatred in her heart. This wicked idea quickly took shape in her mind, and she needed a capable helper to carry out the plan. The first person she thought of was her old acquaintance and old rival, the Viscount Valmont. Valmont was a notorious playboy in Parisian society. He was naturally debauched, arrogant, and vain, treating seduction as the only joy in life. In his eyes, all women were merely prey waiting to be conquered. Once he had them, he discarded them like worn-out things. At this time, Valmont was staying at the estate of his aunt, Madame Rosemonde, single-mindedly pursuing the graceful and dignified Madame Tourvel. Madame Tourvel had come to the estate alone to relax because her husband had been away on official duties for years. She was extremely conservative and reserved, utterly loyal to her marriage. Faced with Valmont's passionate pursuit, she always kept him at a respectful distance. Merteuil came all the way from Paris to the estate to find Valmont. She got straight to the point and asked him to return to Paris, seduce Cecile, and take the girl's innocence. She thought this would be effortless for Valmont, especially since the two had already met once at the theater, but to her surprise, Valmont refused. At this moment, his heart and eyes were completely fixed on Madame Tourvel. He had no interest at all in that little girl who still smelled of childhood. Merteuil did not force him. She only deliberately brought up marital loyalty at dinner. Quietly watching Madame Tourvel's reaction, she discovered that this lady was indeed as rigid and old-fashioned as the rumors said, placing great importance on her husband and family, so she concluded that Valmont's pursuit this time was doomed to fail. Valmont, of course, refused to admit defeat. The two even made a bet over it.
What do you want to wager?
Anything you want.
You. Your body.
And if you lose?
Anything you want.
Valmont worked even harder to lavish attention on Madame Tourvel, while Merteuil returned to Paris in frustration. However, Merteuil soon discovered that Cecile had secretly developed feelings for Danceny, the young musician teaching her lessons. Cecile was deeply troubled and did not know how to face these feelings, so she told Merteuil everything without holding back. She even showed Merteuil Danceny's love letter, hoping Merteuil could guide her through it. On the surface, Merteuil acted like a loving elder and encouraged innocent Cecile to bravely pursue love. She took the initiative to help Cecile revise her reply, then stopped Danceny on the street and handed the letter to him. With her silver tongue, she easily won Danceny's trust, then turned around and taught him how to write even more moving love letters to Cecile. She worked so hard to bring the two together for only one reason. She wanted Danceny and Cecile to cross the line. She even arranged a secret meeting especially for them. She prepared an extremely sensual private room for the pair, and she specially prepared a revealing, seductive outfit for Cecile. She thought that if two hot-blooded young people were alone in the same room, things would naturally happen. Who knew Danceny would turn out to be a true gentleman? From beginning to end, the two only discussed music and poetry, without even holding hands. Merteuil was terribly disappointed, but she did not lose heart. She simply began looking for another way. Meanwhile, Valmont's pursuit of Madame Tourvel was still moving forward with burning intensity. He understood a woman's mind well and knew that although Madame Tourvel seemed cold on the surface, her heart was not entirely unmoved. He found all kinds of ways to make her happy, quietly and without showing his hand. He led her step by step into the web of desire he had carefully woven. Madame Tourvel gradually became confused and enchanted, but just then, she received a letter from a close friend. The letter warned her that Valmont was a complete playboy who had never been serious about any woman. All his pursuit was nothing more than a hunting game. Once the prey was in his hands, he would immediately abandon her. Madame Tourvel read the letter aloud in front of Valmont. Valmont remained silent and did not defend himself at all. Although Madame Tourvel was moved, reason still gained the upper hand. She forced herself to pull back from the edge and keep her distance from Valmont. Seeing that the plan using Danceny had temporarily failed, Merteuil gained Madame Volanges's approval and brought Cecile to Madame Rosemonde's estate for a short stay. Continuing her arrangements, Cecile's arrival instantly brought a little more life to the estate. She was innocent and lively, as lovable as a little angel. Even Valmont dropped his usual flirtatious, reckless manner and played with her like a child. Between them appeared a rare kind of frank, playful innocence. Madame Tourvel saw this and could not help forming a new impression of Valmont. Curious, she asked Merteuil what kind of man Valmont truly was.
Do you think a man can change?
How old are you?
22?
May I offer you some advice? I think you should leave this place, madame. I think you should go and join your husband.
Why do you say that?
Are you in love with Monsieur de Valmont?
No. No, certainly not.
Madame Tourvel refused to admit anything out loud, but inside, her heart was already in turmoil. Late that night after the party ended, she somehow walked into Valmont's room as if pulled by a force she could not resist. In complete emotional chaos, she begged Valmont to leave this place. She knew that if she took even one more step forward, she would fall completely, with no road back. In the end, she packed her things that very night and left in sorrow. That same night, at Merteuil's request, Valmont guided Cecile in writing a love letter to Danceny. Cecile lay on the bed, carefully writing each word he dictated, playfully swinging her legs back and forth. That careless movement accidentally stirred the desire hidden in Valmont's heart. He slowly moved closer to her, testing her step by step. The naive Cecile was nervous and helpless, not knowing what to do. She did not resist, but she also had no idea what was about to happen, much less how serious it was. In the end, confused and unaware, she gave her first night to the seasoned man of pleasure. Afterward, Cecile was shocked and terrified. Disheveled, she ran to Merteuil's room and cried uncontrollably. She felt she did not love Valmont at all. Although she did like him a little sometimes, the person she truly loved was clearly Danceny. Merteuil was secretly delighted, but on the surface she comforted Cecile with warmth and kindness. She said such things were perfectly normal for adults and promised she would never tell her mother. After hearing this, the innocent Cecile finally smiled through her tears and fell into Merteuil's arms. In her eyes, Merteuil understood her even better than her own mother did. When Valmont learned that Madame Tourvel had returned to Paris, he immediately rode after her at full speed. Madame Tourvel had originally resigned herself to despair and prepared to cut off all feelings, but when she saw Valmont suddenly appear before her, the spark that had just gone out was instantly lit again. She threw herself into his arms without caring about anything and gave herself to him completely. After a night of passion, Madame Tourvel believed Valmont had truly changed his ways. She made up her mind to cast everything aside and spend her life with the man she loved. Without hesitation, she sent her husband a decisive letter, confessing that she had fallen in love with another man. But when she returned home full of joy, she discovered that Valmont had already left without saying goodbye. He had only left a short letter saying he had other matters to handle. In the end, this man still could not change his womanizing nature, and she was nothing more than one ordinary trophy among countless others. After leaving Madame Tourvel, Valmont rushed to Merteuil's place without stopping and proudly announced that he had won the bet, demanding that she fulfill her original promise. But at this moment, Merteuil went back on her word. Valmont flew into a rage. Competitive by nature, he could not stand being played, and like a spoiled child, he flipped over Merteuil's bathtub. From that moment on, The two completely broke with each other. Seeing Cecile and Jurcourt's wedding drawing closer and closer, Danceny grew frantic with worry. He went to Valmont himself, begging him to help stop the marriage and even planning to duel Monsieur Jurcourt. Valmont agreed without hesitation. He happily went to see Cecile and placed Danceny's letter in her hands. After reading it, Cecile burst into tears and admitted that she still loved Danceny deeply. Valmont then urged her to run away with the person she truly loved, instead of obeying Merteur's arrangements and marrying a man she did not love at all. He did this partly out of genuine support for Cecile's pursuit of love, and partly to take revenge on Merteur for breaking her promise, making sure her perfect plan completely fell apart. Under his dictation, Cecile wrote a reply to Danceny, but after all, she was still very young, and faced with such a major decision, she remained hesitant. Just then, Monsieur Jurcourt suddenly came to visit and gave her an exquisitely beautiful and extremely valuable diamond necklace. Cecile was flattered beyond belief, and her vanity was completely ignited in that moment. In the end, she decided to follow Merteur's advice, marry Jurcourt, and keep Danceny as her lover after the wedding. When Danceny received the letter, he was bitterly disappointed and felt his love had been deeply desecrated. Furious, he went to Merteur and forced her to write to Cecile, demanding that Cecile break off her engagement to Jurcourt, but Merteur refused to let her plan fail at the last step. She tried to persuade Danceny not to be so naive and childish. She told him marriage was far less sacred than he imagined. Not every love had to end in marriage, and remaining Cecile's lover was the most practical choice. How could Danceny, who worshipped true love, possibly listen to that? Young and hot-blooded, he could not take in these twisted arguments from the adult world at all. At the same time, Madame Tourvel remained hopelessly devoted to Valmont. She came alone to Valmont's residence and lingered at the door, waiting there for several full days. Only when Valmont could no longer bear to watch did he ask the steward to invite her in.
Why did you come? What do you think you'll find here?
That you love me?
Do you want me to lie to you?
Yes.
Her persistence and deep love left Valmont both surprised and moved. The two spent another passionate night together, but early the next morning, Madame Tourvel quietly left without saying goodbye. Feeling guilty, Valmont bought flowers and went to visit her, only to find her home in complete disorder. As if it had just gone through a violent conflict, he saw Madame Tourvel's husband, a judge, sitting at the desk with his back to him. In that instant, Valmont understood everything. He silently left the flowers behind and quietly withdrew. Perhaps because of Madame Tourvel, Valmont felt for the first time that his life was so empty and dull. He began to want to turn back from his old ways and take love seriously. He found Merteur again, trying to make peace with her, even half sincerely and half jokingly proposing marriage. Merteur was stunned at first, then was so moved she almost cried, although both of them knew perfectly well, with temperaments so similar, if they married, sooner or later they would betray each other. Still, Merteur decided to share her final secret with him. She signaled for him to walk to the bedroom door. The moment the door opened, what Valmont saw was a disheveled Danceny. It turned out Merteur had already told Danceny that Valmont had violated Cecile. In anger and despair, Danceny had also acted on impulse and slept with Merteur. At this moment, Merteur was like a victorious general, mercilessly mocking Valmont's failure and weakness. Valmont slapped her hard across the face and stormed out in a fury. But how could he possibly admit defeat like this? He rode to the market, bought a set of men's clothing, and headed straight for Cecile's residence. He told Cecile to change immediately and leave with him. He wanted to take her to Danceny and let her live a life where she could freely choose the man she loved. But Cecile only kept shaking her head. At that moment, Merteur pushed the door open and came in.
Monsieur de Valmont, you will leave this house immediately.
It turned out Cecile had already told her mother everything that had happened to her. In the end, she still bowed her head to reality. Valmont left with nothing, disappointed and bitter. The moment he returned home, he received a duel challenge sent by Danceny. That night, he walked alone into a low-class tavern. He casually found 3 unimpressive men to serve as witnesses for his duel. After all these years rolling through women's beds, in the end he did not even have one true male friend. In front of these men, he drank himself into a stupor, and even drunk, he remained as arrogant and reckless as ever. When he went to the duel the next morning, he was still not completely sober. Danceny originally did not want to fight a drunk man, as long as Valmont was willing to apologize for what happened to Cecile. Their grudge could be wiped clean, but the proud Valmont flatly refused and drew his sword first to attack. In self-defense, Danceny killed him in the duel. And just like that, Valmont ended his reckless life in the most absurd way. At Valmont's funeral, Cecile suddenly told Madame Rosemond that she was carrying Valmont's child. Madame Rosemond was both shocked and delighted when she heard it. Although she had lost her only nephew, at least the family bloodline would continue. Not long afterward, Cecile and Monsieur Jurcourt held an extravagant and grand wedding. Every important figure in high society was present. Even the king himself came to the royal chapel to witness the moment. Cecile wore magnificent clothes, smiling calmly, her every movement composed, with none of her former shyness and unease. It was as if she had already inherited Merteuil's true teachings, moving with ease through this mixed world of power and desire. And Danceny, who had once loved her so deeply, now showed no sadness at all, laughing and flirting with a beautiful woman beside him. It was as if he had become another Valmont. Merteuil walked alone through the noisy crowd, wearing the same elegant smile as always, but deep in her eyes, there was a loneliness that could not quite be named. In the end, she had achieved her revenge, but inside, she did not feel the pleasure she had imagined. High society was like a huge dye vat, and very few people could stay untouched by it. She had once said Cecile looked very much like her younger self. And now, Cecile truly was becoming more and more like the woman Merteuil had become. Madame Tourvel came alone to Valmont's grave and quietly laid down a white rose. She had once burned for this man like a moth flying into fire, and she had struggled and fallen in pain because of him. And now, everything seemed to have finally returned to stillness. Her husband had also forgiven her betrayal. She could finally carry that unforgettable memory with her and calmly return to her family, as if everything had been nothing more than a desolate yet dazzling dream. The greatest irony of Valmont's story is that he spent his life treating feelings as games, and sincerity as trophies he could seize whenever he pleased. But in the end, the person who truly shook him was precisely Madame Tourvel, the woman he had hurt the deepest. Merteuil thought she had won. She successfully destroyed Cecile's innocence and also destroyed the last part of Valmont that wanted to turn back. But when she watched Cecile become more and more like her younger self, she finally understood that revenge never brings real satisfaction. It only turns more innocent people into another version of yourself. Danceny lost his purity, Valmont lost his life, and Madame Tourvel lost everything she once firmly believed in, and Merteuil lost the ability to truly love. In this gorgeous world of status and desire, no one was truly a winner. They thought they were controlling others, but in the end, they all became pawns of desire. The most frightening thing is not loving the wrong person, but having a real heart and still treating it like a game you can walk away from at any moment. By the time you finally want to be serious, some people are already gone, and some wounds can never be repaired.